So we all know of the best DPS characters in the game. You know, characters like Nilou, Mika, Arlecchino, and the reason for them being so good is that they can all put out high numbers with little efforts. But support characters are just as important as DPS characters, and it can be difficult to pick and choose who's better to pull for. So I'm here to help. Let's go over some of the top support characters in Genshin Impact. There's a lot of them, so to make sure that this video isn't an hour long, I'll quickly and simply be explaining why they're good, so that you can get a feel for if you'd want to pull them or not for your account. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. Tokyo Treat is a fun and exclusive Japanese snack box featuring unique and exclusive flavours from all around Japan. Each box is filled with a variety of full-sized, fun and exclusive Japanese snack items, like unique Kit Kats, uniquely flavoured Japanese chips, and occasional Japanese sodas that are only available in Japan for a limited time. Sakura Co is a monthly Japanese artisan snack box that supports local Japanese snack makers, with each box coming with 20 traditional, authentic and artisan Japanese snacks. This month's Tokyo Treat theme is Cherry Blossom Bites. Cherry blossoms are pink and snacks are sweets, and this Tokyo Treat Sakura box is a treat that you can't beat. With Sakura flavoured treats and awesome Japanese snacks inside, this box brings the spirit of spring right to you. I enjoyed the strawberry shortcake Kit Kats and crispy fried rice crackers. This month's Sakura Co theme is Seasons of Sakura. Sakura season in Japan marks the arrival of spring, a time when nature awakens and envelopes the landscape in soft hues of pink and whites. Sakura Co want to share the traditional flavours of this season with you. I enjoyed the Sakura Daifuku and the Sakura Manju, so click the link in the description or the pinned comment to get $5 off your first box if you use my code. And once again, thank you Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co for sponsoring this video. Xilonen is a support character who can decrease elemental resistance of enemies. As long as there are 2 Pyro, Cryo, Electro or Hydro characters on your team, Xilonen is able to match those elements and reduce the enemy's resistance of those elements. For instance, if your team was Xilonen, Nilou, Furina and Kazuha, she would be able to provide Hydro resistance shredding. Xilonen is also able to heal the on-field character using her elemental burst, which is why you could run Kazuha in that team instead of another healer. As another example, if you run Xilonen, Arlecchino, Yelan and Kazuha, she would be able to provide Pyro and Hydro resistance shredding. And finally, if you run Xilonen, Risley, Mika and Furina, she would be able to provide Cryo, Pyro and Hydro resistance shredding. In terms of actually using her, you'll first need to use her elemental skill, then perform 2 normal attacks to actually activate her resistance shredding. Kazuha is a swirl support character who is able to greatly increase the damage of swirlable elements, as well as providing crowd control. Because he's Anemo, he can use the Viridescent artifact set to buff the team and shred resistances of enemies. Because of this, Kazuha can pretty much work in any team, just like Xilonen. Plus, with his 4th Ascension passive, Kazuha grants a 0.04% elemental damage bonus for the swirled elements for every point of elemental mastery that Kazuha himself has. So, if Kazuha has 1000 elemental mastery on him, he can give a whopping 40% damage bonus. Sucrose is a great 4-star crowd control character, and she can also generate lots of energy particles. However, at C6, she can rival a C0 Kazuha, since at C6, if her burst triggers an elemental absorption, all party members gain a 20% elemental damage bonus for the element that was swirled. And fortunately for Sucrose, if you're building her for support purposes, then she doesn't need too much talent investments. Just stick Viridescent on her and get her C6. Zhongli is a top-tier shield character in Genshin. In most situations, his shield is borderline unbreakable when built right, so he's a great character for if you want to turn your brain off when you're attacking with your main DPS, because with him, you won't need to worry about dodging. His shield also gives unconditional universal elemental resistance shredding, and his elemental burst can petrify enemies for a few seconds, which is kind of like freeze, but they're not frozen, they're stoned. But yeah, generally though, Zhongli's highlight is his elemental skill, which is his shield. That is his main talent priority. Bennett is a classic 1.0 support character. Bennett's burst is able to not only heal, but it provides an attack buff. So as long as your main DPS scales off of attack and not HP or anything like that, then Bennett will really help to boost their damage, especially once he's level 90'd and fully invested into. His burst also has a low energy cost, so it's not too much effort to get it back up once you've used it. Before, in the Genshin community, Bennett C6 had a very bad stigma, and as such people wouldn't even activate it even if they had it. But nowadays C6ing Bennett isn't too much of a big deal, since characters who would have been affected negatively by Bennett C6 have support characters of their own now. Yelan and Xingqiu are both top tier characters for Hydra application, especially for Pyro mains. They both provide different perks though, despite being used in similar situations, and sometimes even in the same team. You see, Xingqiu has more defensive utility, thanks to providing resistance to interruption and damage reduction, as well as a bit more Hydra application. Yelan, on the other hand, focuses mainly on raw damage and buffing your character's damage outputs, so both are great. While Raiden can be a DPS, in this video I'm going to be talking about more of her support capabilities, aka she's a great battery. She generates energy for everyone in the party at the same time, so you're not as dependent on energy particles as you normally would be. So the more energy recharge you have on her, the better. Plus her skill is able to provide near constant electro application, which is an added bonus for any teams that may need it. Also an honourable mention here to Fischl, who is also a great battery character. So if you don't have Raiden, you can use Fischl for battery and electro application purposes. Furina is not only an amazing off-field Hydra sub-DPS thanks to her little minions when you use her skill, but she's also a universal buffer. After using Furina's elemental burst, increasing and decreasing the team's HP will increase both the damage and healing of the team. While she can be used with any team as long as you have a team-wide healer on the team with her, her burst is especially good for characters that have life drain and self-healing abilities, since they allow a faster buff gain. You know, characters like Nilou, Risley, even Hu Tao. Furina is great because she allows healers who weren't highly used by the Genshin community before to suddenly have a use, thanks to Furina's HP draining mechanic. So suddenly after her release, the character roster gains some balance. Team-wide healers are now in demand, and characters like Jean, Xianyun and Baiju are top picks for Furina teams. Even C0 is a top healer for these kind of teams, for the 4 C0 havers out there. Mona is a classic character for showcases, since her elemental burst provides a big damage increase. This is because during its duration, the damage taken by opponents is increased. The more leveled up her burst is, the bigger the damage bonus it provides. It can even do big damage itself if you wanted to turn Mona into a burst DPS. Plus, since Mona is a catalyst, you can stick TDDS on her, and your main DPS will gain another big boost in damage alongside Mona's initial buff. While Venti isn't as widely used as Kazuha, Venti is still a top tier crowd control character. He really shines in endgame content like Spiral Abyss and a theatre during tower defense portions, where there are smaller enemies that can be grouped together using his elemental burst. Even though Lan Yan is a 4-star, she already has an advantage due to her being Animo, and as such, being able to hold Viridescence. Plus, she can also use TDDS as well, so even if she's your only Animo character, she'll still be highly beneficial for your accounts. However, Lan Yan is also a shield character. Her shield can absorb Pyro, Electro, Cryo and Hydro, and when it does, her shield will gain 250% toughness against that element. However, at C2, her shield is said to rival that of Zhongli's, and Zhongli's shield is the best in the whole game. Well, she can rival it under the right circumstances. Her C2 allows her shield's absorption to refresh every 2 seconds as long as the rotation consistently includes normal attacks. So if your main DPS is Arlecchino, for example, you'll be able to reap the benefits of her C2. Nahida is the best Dendro applicator in the whole game. She marks enemies and periodically deals Dendro damage using her skill. Nahida's elemental burst is interesting. If there's a Pyro on the team, it increases the damage of her skill. If there's a Hydro character, it will increase the duration of her burst. And if there's an Electro character, it will decrease the interval between each Trikarma purification, meaning that her skill will hit more often. In terms of what her burst actually does, it increases elemental mastery for the on-field character by 25% of the party member with the highest elemental mastery. So essentially, Nahida is ideal for any team that requires Dendro. So Hyperbloom, Bloom, Aggravate and Quicken teams. Not only does Xianyun excel in exploration, but she enables the plunge attack playstyle for any character. This can be used to buff characters who already use plunging attacks like Xiao and Garming, but you can also use her for anyone you want to try using this playstyle with. D-Luke mains in particular have it pretty good, since he has the highest plunging attack scalings, at least in terms of base stats, in the whole game, making it so that him and Xianyun together is actually pretty meta. In addition to this, Xianyun provides heals, so you can stick Furina on Xianyun teams. Yunjin excels as a support character who boosts the normal attack damage of other party members using her elemental burst. So characters who mainly use normal attacks to do the bulk of their damage will benefit from Yunjin's normal attack boost. So characters like Ayato, Yoimiya, Clorinde, Arlecchino, and Ningguang, for example, will all benefit from Yunjin. As well as generally being a shielder, Diona's C6 provides a significant elemental mastery buff to the team when her burst is active, so this is good for if you want to deal more damage using elemental reactions. Kokomi's elemental skill covers a wide area, meaning that it can apply Hydro very easily. Plus, she can deal crazy heals to her teammates. Because of this makes her pretty versatile, and she can work in a range of teams, including Bloom, Freeze, and Hyper Bloom teams. Kuki Shinobu's elemental skill is able to apply Electro onto enemies, as well as heal the active character. This makes her a great support for Dendro teams, and Hyper Bloom teams in particular is where she shines the most. Also, for any Eula havers out there, you can try pairing Shinobu with her for Superconduct. If you want to run a good Bloom team, Nilou will play a huge part in making it a successful Bloom team. This is because when her team consists of just Hydro and Dendro, she is able to create bountiful cores, which are essentially normal Dendro cores but on steroids. These bountiful cores act like normal cores, but the difference is that they deal massive AoE damage, which massively boosts the potential of Nilou's Bloom teams. C6 Chevreuse is pretty good because her C6 provides a damage buff to Pyro and Electro characters after a team member is healed by her burst. This makes her ideal for overloaded team comps, and these teams must only consist of Pyro and Electro characters in order for Chevreuse to be used to her full potential. Using her elemental skill, Citlali is able to boost Hydro and Pyro damage. She is able to provide consistent cryo application, shielding, and enemy resistance shredding. This makes her an incredible support, especially in the game state right now, since the top DPSs in the whole game at the moment are either Hydro or Pyro. Shenhe is the dedicated cryo support who boosts the damage of other cryo characters on the field. She's able to provide a flat damage buff through her skill and burst. This makes Shenhe good for cryo DPS units like Ganyu, Ayaka, Wriothesley, or any other cryo DPS you want to use. If you're an Electro main looking for a support to help your Electro DPS deal more damage, C6 Kujou Sara will help you out quite a bit. Her C6 will provide an additional crit damage bonus for Electro characters, an increase of 60% at that. C6 Faruzan is crucial for Anemo mains, especially for Wanderer and Xiao mains, since she provides a substantial crit damage buff to Anemo teammates, 40% to be exact, and she can also consistently group enemies together with her burst. She's also able to generate Anemo particles and shred enemies' Anemo resistance, making her a niche but top tier support for Anemo teams. Gorou's C6 is able to provide up to 40% crit damage to geo damage dealt by Gorou's teammates. Gorou is a pretty niche support anyway, seeing as this would mainly affect geo characters like Ito and Albedo, but if you're someone who heavily invests into the geo elements, then C6 Gorou will be pretty good for you. And finally, C6 Mika. Mika is already an incredibly niche support, seeing as he buffs physical damage, which no one uses in the current game states. But if you want to try and build up a physical unit and you have C6 Mika, active characters affected by his elemental skill will deal 60% more physical crit damage. And that's it. That was my video discussing pure support characters. No DPSs, no sub DPSs, just supports. For anyone watching this in the future, aka past version 5.4, let me know who I missed on this list. Thanks for watching, follow my Instagram, join the Discord, and comment this bird emoji. Peace!